know it. Somewhere we can really talk.
Private?
Just us, no eyes watching.
Let's go. Sang Hun, did you do all this decoration by yourself?
Shh, stop, don't want to kiss your lips.
Welcome back to K-Whisper, where we share the real, unfiltered stories happening in the heart of Korea. The stories they don't want you to hear. Before we dive into today's story, we want to give a massive shout-out to KC Lions for the super thanks. We at K-Whisper truly appreciate you and all our incredible supporters. Your generosity allows us to keep bringing these important stories to light. We're so close to 3,000 subscribers. We need your support to hit this milestone. If this story impacts you, please do us a favor. Hit that like button, smash subscribe, and drop a comment telling us what you think. Every single interaction helps us grow this community. Now, let's go back to the beginning. This is the story of Lois Adeyemi. And it's a cautionary tale every woman needs to hear. The city of Seoul stretched beneath the night sky like a constellation of earthbound stars, each light representing a dream, a struggle, a life being lived in one of the world's most dynamic cities. In a modern apartment in Itaewon, the international district where cultures collided and coexisted, Lois Adeyemi sat alone with a view that millions would envy and a loneliness that no skyline could cure. At 32 years old, Lois had built an empire of one. Senior marketing director at Hanul Corporation. Corner office on the 14th floor. A salary that made her parents back in Lagos proud and her younger sister envious. 10 years in South Korea had transformed the bright-eyed graduate student who'd arrived with 2 suitcases and a scholarship into a woman who commanded boardrooms and negotiated million-won contracts in flawless Korean. But success, as Lois had learned, made a cold companion at night. She sat curled on her velvet couch, designer shoes kicked off carelessly on the hardwood floor, a half-empty bottle of red wine breathing on the coffee table. Her phone glowed with a notification that had become depressingly familiar. Min Jin-sol has unmatched you. Lois didn't flinch. She couldn't even remember which one Min Jae had been, the banker who'd seemed interested until his friend saw them together. The startup CEO who'd asked if her hair was real. The English teacher who'd confessed he'd never dated a black woman before and wanted to see what it was like. They all blurred together after a while, a parade of almost connections that evaporated the moment reality set in. She was always too something. Too black, too foreign, too successful, too confident, too tall, too curvy, too much woman for men who wanted someone they could mold into their ideal. The reflection in the darkened window showed a woman who appeared to have everything under control. Burgundy blazer tailored to perfection. Natural hair styled in an elegant bun with a few artful curls framing her face. Gold jewelry that whispered wealth rather than shouted it. The woman in the reflection looked like she belonged on the cover of a business magazine. The woman in the reflection was a beautiful lie. If someone had told Lois 10 years ago that her professional success in Seoul would come easily but romantic connection would prove impossible, she would have laughed. Young Lois, fresh off the plane with her master's degree and her optimism intact, had believed that love was colorblind, that good men existed everywhere, that her personality and intelligence would be enough. Seoul had methodically, almost surgically, taught her otherwise. The education had come in the form of dates that started with promise and ended in disappointment. There had been Ji-hun, the finance professional with a perfect smile who'd leaned across the dinner table 3 months ago and whispered, "I've always been curious about black women. They say you're more passionate in bed." Lois had left before dessert arrived, his confused face burning in her memory. Then came Sung-min, who had seemed like the one. Educated, well-traveled, thoughtful. Their first date had sparkled with chemistry. Their second had deepened into genuine connection. By their third date, Lois had allowed herself to hope. 2 weeks later, his text messages stopped. His calls went unanswered. And then came the Instagram post that explained everything. Engagement photos with a petite Korean woman, both of them beaming under cherry blossoms. The caption had read, "Finally found the one my parents approve of." The lesson was clear. Lois could be exciting, exotic, a temporary adventure. But she would never be the one they brought home. Most recently, there had been Hyun-woo. Sweet, shy Hyun-woo who worked in graphic design and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know her. They'd gone to a bar in Hongdae, their conversation flowing easily over craft beer and shared laughter. Then his friends had arrived. 3 Korean men who'd stopped mid-conversation when they saw Lois. They hadn't been hostile. They'd simply stared, their eyes moving between Hyun-woo and Lois with expressions that mixed curiosity and judgment. Lois had watched Hyun-woo's body language change in real time. His posture had stiffened. His smile had become forced. The easy warmth between them had frozen over. The next day, his text message had been brief and brutal. "I don't think this will work out. Sorry." Each rejection had chipped away at something inside her. In public, Lois laughed about it with her friends, made self-deprecating jokes about her dating life, turned pain into punchlines. But alone in her apartment, the laughter faded into something harder and sharper, a cynicism that protected her but also isolated her. The decision came on a Wednesday evening in early September after a particularly grueling day at work. Lois had delivered a presentation to Hanul Corporation's board of directors that had been, by any objective measure, brilliant. She'd outlined a marketing strategy that would expand their reach into African markets, backed by research and data that left no room for argument. The board had been impressed. Her direct supervisor had nodded approvingly. And then, in the meeting immediately afterward, her male colleague Jae-sung had somehow received credit for half of her ideas. He'd smiled at her across the conference table as the executives congratulated him, a smile that said, "What are you going to do about it?" Nothing. She could do nothing. Speak up and be labeled difficult, aggressive, angry. All the adjectives that followed black women who refused to stay quiet. Stay silent and watch her work be stolen. She'd chosen silence, as she always did. She'd chosen professionalism. She'd chosen to save her rage for later. Later had arrived in the form of her empty apartment and a bottle of wine. "One more time," Lois said aloud, her voice echoing in the silence. "Just one more goddamn time." She pulled out her phone and downloaded the dating app she'd deleted and reinstalled so many times the app probably recognized her device. This time, however, something shifted inside her. This time, she decided to stop trying to make herself palatable. Stop filtering her personality to seem less threatening. Stop hiding her success to avoid intimidating fragile male egos. This time, she would be unapologetically herself. And if Korean men couldn't handle that, then they could swipe left. Her profile took shape with defiant honesty. Profile name: Los Age. 32 Occupation: Marketing Director. Bio: Nigerian roots, Korean heart, global mindset. 10 years in Seoul. Fluent in Korean sarcasm and knowing exactly what I want. I'm successful, independent, and not apologizing for either. If you can't handle a woman who orders her own food and pays her own bills, swipe left. If "Where are you really from?" is your opening line, swipe left. If you're looking for someone real who won't play games, let's talk. She selected photos that showed exactly who she was. A professional headshot that radiated confidence, a candid shot of her laughing at a rooftop bar with friends, a picture of her at Gyeongbokgung Palace wearing a custom-made hanbok in royal blue and gold, and one of her at her desk with Seoul's skyline glittering behind her. Her finger hovered over the Create Profile button. This felt like jumping off a cliff, exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. She pressed it. Profile live. Start swiping. The responses came quickly, and most confirmed exactly why Lois had hesitated. Hey exotic queen smiling face with heartis. The fetishizers who saw her skin color as a novelty. I've never been with a black girl before. Want to be my first. The experimenters who saw her as an item on a sexual bucket list. You're pretty for a dark-skinned girl. The ones who thought they were complimenting her. Lois deleted, blocked, and reported with mechanical efficiency. Her thumb was hovering over the app's uninstall button when a notification appeared that made her pause. Sang Hun has sent you a message. Something about the name felt different. Or maybe Lois was just desperate enough to hope it would be different this time. She clicked on his profile, and the first photo filled her screen. A man in his mid-30s with an easy smile, dressed in a simple black turtleneck. Unlike the heavily filtered, professionally posed photos that dominated Korean dating apps, his pictures had a casual authenticity. One showed him browsing in a bookstore, another at what appeared to be an art gallery, a third catching him mid-laugh at an outdoor cafe. His hair looked naturally styled rather than sculpted with product. His smile reached his eyes. His bio was refreshingly simple. 34, Seoul native. Work in import-export. Believe good conversation beats good looks, though both is nice. Looking for someone who challenges me, makes me think, and isn't afraid to call me out when I'm wrong. Authenticity over perfection. Always. The message itself made Lois's eyebrows rise. I read your profile 3 times. Your bio made me laugh, then made me think. Where are you really from? The fact that you have to preemptively address that says a lot about dating culture here, and not in a good way. I'm sorry you've had to deal with that. If you're interested in coffee with someone who appreciates directness and intelligence, let me know. No games. No weird questions about your hair or skin. Just 2 people seeing if there's a connection worth exploring. Sang Hun said. Lois stared at the message for a full minute, her wine glass forgotten. It was normal, respectful, self-aware without being performative. It acknowledged her experience without centering himself as some kind of savior. It was almost suspiciously perfect. Her cynicism and her hope warred inside her. Hope won by the narrowest margin. Coffee sounds good, she typed back. But fair warning, I'm going to test whether you're actually different or just better at hiding the red flags. Smiling face with smiling eyes. The response came within 30 seconds. I'd expect nothing less. I'm an open book. Bring your hardest questions. I can take it. Coffee turned into a 3-hour video call when Sang Hun's work emergency prevented them from meeting in person. Lois had been disappointed initially, but the video call revealed something she hadn't expected. Genuine comfort. Sang Hun appeared on her screen looking exactly like his photos. No strategic angles or filters. His apartment in the background was tastefully minimalist with bookshelves that Lois wanted to examine more closely. When he smiled, it transformed his entire face. So, Lois began, wine glass in hand for courage. Question 1. Why is a seemingly normal, employed, reasonably attractive 34-year-old man single? Sang Hun laughed, a sound that seemed to come from deep in his chest. Direct. I appreciate that. Honest answer. I spent my 20s and early 30s building my career. Import-export is demanding, lots of travel, long hours. When I finally looked up from my work, everyone around me was married with kids. My parents have been introducing me to suitable women for years. Suitable, Lois repeated, emphasizing the word. Let me guess. Suitable means Korean, from a good family, willing to quit her job once babies arrive? Exactly. And every time I meet these supposedly suitable women, I feel like I'm at a job interview for a position I don't want. They're nice enough, but there's no spark. No challenge. No fire. And you think you'll find fire on a dating app? I think, Sang Hun said, leaning closer to his camera, that connection can start anywhere. The real question is whether both people are brave enough to be honest about who they are and what they want. They talked for hours. Sang Hun asked about her experience in Korean corporate culture, and actually listened when she described the casual racism disguised as cultural differences, the exhaustion of being the only black person in most rooms, the constant calculation of how to be excellent without being threatening. He shared his own frustrations with family expectations, the pressure to conform to a specific life path, the loneliness of success that looked perfect from the outside but felt hollow on the inside. When the call ended at midnight, Lois realized she was smiling. Really smiling, not the professional mask she wore to work or the brittle armor she showed on dates. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt seen. The 3 months that followed unfolded like a slow-burning romance novel, conducted entirely through screens and carefully crafted text messages. Sang Hun claimed his work in import-export kept him traveling constantly, Shanghai one week, Tokyo the next, Singapore after that. But despite the distance and time zones, he texted Lois every single morning without fail. By December, Lois's life had developed a rhythm centered around Sang Hun's messages. His good morning texts became her first smile of the day. His voice notes, he'd started sending those in November, made her commute bearable. When something good happened at work, he was the first person she wanted to tell. When something bad happened, he was the voice that reminded her of her worth. Her best friend Amara noticed the change immediately during their regular Sunday brunch in mid-December. "You're glowing," Amara observed, cutting into her avocado toast with surgical precision. "And you keep checking your phone. What's his name?" Lois tried to play it cool, but her smile betrayed her. "His name is Sang Hun. We've been talking for a few months." "Talking?" Amara's eyebrow arched in that way that meant she already suspected something. "Like on the phone or texting or?" "Both. Mostly texting. Video calls when he has time. He travels a lot for work, import, export." Amara set down her fork, her expression shifting from amused to concerned. "And you haven't met him in person yet?" "Not yet. But he's asking me out for Valentine's Day. A proper date." "Lois." Amara's voice carried the careful tone of someone about to say something their friend doesn't want to hear. 3 months of talking and you haven't met face to face. That's a red flag the size of Seoul Tower. "It's not like that," Lois said defensively. "He's been traveling. And we have video called. It's not catfishing." "I didn't say it was catfishing. I'm saying, Korean men in this city, they're not always what they seem. Especially the ones who seem too good to be true." Lois felt her walls going up, brick by defensive brick. "Not all Korean men are the same, Amara. And Sang Hun has been nothing but respectful, honest, and consistent. He actually listens when I talk. He asks real questions. He doesn't fetishize me or treat me like some exotic experiment to check off his list. I know, and that's great, but what? But I should assume he's lying because other men have disappointed me. But I should stay cynical and alone because hoping is too risky." Amara reached across the table, her voice gentling. "I'm not saying don't hope. I'm saying be smart about it. Meet him in a public place. Tell me where you're going. Share your location on your phone. Bring your pepper spray. Just protect yourself, okay? You're my best friend. I don't want to see you hurt again." "I appreciate the concern," Lois said, softening slightly. "But I'm not some naive girl. I'm a grown woman who can take care of herself." "I know you are. Just promise me you'll be careful." "I promise." They'd moved on to other topics after that, but Amara's words lingered in Lois's mind like smoke, impossible to grasp but impossible to ignore. Lois was working late at the office. The city lights of Seoul spread before her like a promise, when her phone buzzed with a message that made her heart skip. "I know Valentine's Day is commercial and cliché, but I'm going to lean into the cliché anyway. Let me take you somewhere special. Real date. Face to face. I'm tired of screens between us. I want to see your smile in person. I want to hear your laugh without pixels in the way." Sang Hun said. Her professional composure melted into something girlish and giddy. "Took you long enough to ask." Lois replied. "I wanted to wait for the right moment. I want our first meeting to be perfect. You deserve perfect, Lois. You deserve someone who puts in effort. Dinner. Somewhere nice but not pretentious. Somewhere we can actually talk. And then we'll see where the night takes us. No pressure. No expectations. Just two people finally seeing if this connection is as real in person as it feels through a screen." Jill. February 14 to Lewis said. "I'll send you details next week. Prepare to have every expectation exceeded." Lois. Confident. "I like that in a man." Sang Hun. "You haven't seen anything yet." As Lois set down her phone, she couldn't stop the smile that spread across her face. For the first time in years, maybe in her entire decade in Seoul, she felt genuinely excited about a date. The cynicism that had become her armor felt lighter somehow, easier to shed. Maybe Amara was wrong. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe Sang Hun was exactly who he seemed to be. A good man looking for real connection in a city that often valued appearance over authenticity. Maybe, just maybe, Lois had finally found someone who saw her, really saw her, all of her, and wanted to stay. February 14th couldn't come fast enough. The countdown began. 55 days until everything changed. Valentine's Day arrived with a kind of perfect soul winter evening that felt like it had been ordered specifically for romance. The sky was clear, the air crisp but not biting, and the city's lights twinkled with promise as Lois stepped out of the taxi in front of Il Paradiso, an upscale Italian restaurant in Hanamdong that overlooked the Han River. She'd spent 2 hours getting ready, changing outfits 3 times before settling on a form-fitting burgundy dress that hugged her curves in all the right places. Her natural hair was styled in soft, defined curls that framed her face perfectly. Gold jewelry, earrings, a delicate necklace, and bangles caught the light as she moved. She'd done her makeup with extra care. A subtle smoky eye, perfectly contoured cheekbones, and a deep wine-colored lip that made her smile devastating. As she entered the restaurant, she spotted him immediately. Young Sang Hun stood from a corner table, and Lois felt her breath catch. The photos hadn't lied, but they hadn't done him justice either. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that looked custom-made, a crisp white shirt unbuttoned just enough to be interesting, and a watch that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His hair was styled in that effortlessly perfect way Korean men seem to master. But it was his smile, warm, genuine, reaching his eyes, that made Lois's careful composure waver. "Lois," he said, and even her name sounded different in his voice. He moved toward her, taking her hand and bringing it to his lips in a gesture that should have felt cheesy but instead felt perfectly natural. "You're even more beautiful than I imagined." "And you're real," Lois replied, her nerves melting into her natural confidence. "Half of me expected to show up and find out this was all an elaborate prank." Sang Hun laughed, a rich sound that made something warm bloom in Lois's chest. "No prank. Just me, very nervous, trying not to mess this up." He gestured to the table. "Shall we?" As he pulled out her chair, an old-fashioned gesture that Lois appreciated, she took in the setting. The table was positioned by the window with a perfect view of the river, candlelight flickering between them. A single red rose lay across her plate. "You're pulling out all the stops," Lois observed as she sat. "For you." "Absolutely." Sang Hun settled into his chair across from her, and when their eyes met, Lois felt that electric charge she'd only experienced through screens suddenly magnified tenfold in person. The sommelier appeared with wine, pouring generous glasses of a deep red that Sang Hun had apparently pre-selected. As the evening began, Lois felt herself relaxing in ways she hadn't expected. The conversation flowed as easily in person as it had over text, maybe easier. Sang Hun was attentive in a way that felt genuine rather than performative. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers, his eyes never leaving hers, his phone staying face down on the table, untouched. "Tell me something you've never told anyone on a first date," Sang Hun said after they'd ordered, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. Lois took a sip of wine, considering. The alcohol was already warming her from the inside, loosening the edges of her usual guardedness. "Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice staying in Seoul. 10 years is a long time to fight to belong somewhere that constantly reminds you you're different. And yet you stayed. Because leaving feels like admitting defeat. Like saying they won." He paused. "That probably sounds stubborn." "It sounds brave," Sang Hun corrected. "Most people would have left. The fact that you didn't, that you built a career and a life despite everything, that takes courage." The way he said it, the intensity in his eyes, made Lois feel seen in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. Their food arrived, and Sang Hun kept her wine glass full, subtly, smoothly, always attentive. By the time their main course was cleared, Lois had lost count of how many glasses she'd had. 3, 4. The pleasant buzz made everything softer, warmer, easier. "This wine is dangerous," Lois said, her words just slightly slower than usual. "I'm going to say something embarrassing if I'm not careful." "Good." Sang Hun's smile was playful but his eyes were serious. "I want the real you, not the careful version. The real me is thinking about how good you look in that suit. The real me has been thinking about that dress since you walked in." He reached across the table, his fingers finding hers. The touch sent electricity up Lois's arm. "Actually, that's a lie. The real me has been thinking about what's underneath that dress." Lois felt heat flood through her that had nothing to do with the wine. "That's very forward, Mr. Jung. Is it working?" "Dangerously well." Sang Hun's thumb traced slow circles on her palm, and Lois became acutely aware of how long it had been since someone had touched her with intent. 5 years since her last relationship had imploded. 5 years of carefully maintained independence that suddenly felt like loneliness in disguise. "Come on," Sang Hun said, signaling for the check. "Let's get out of here. Have another drink somewhere more private." The wine made Lois bold. "How private?" "As private as you want." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "I booked a suite, just in case. No pressure, Lois. We can just talk, have champagne, continue this conversation without everyone in this restaurant pretending not to watch us." Lois glanced around and realized he was right. Several tables had been sneaking glances their way. An interracial couple, still a novelty worth staring at. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Let's go." The drive to the hotel was a blur of anticipation and nerves. Sang Hun's hand rested on her thigh in the back seat of the taxi. Casual but possessive. Lois felt hyper-aware of every point of contact between them. The hotel was luxurious, one of those 5-star places in Gangnam where rooms started at $1,000,001 per night. Sang Hun guided her to a private elevator with his hand on the small of her back, a touch that felt both protective and promising. When the elevator doors opened directly into the suite, Lois gasped. The room was a romantic fantasy brought to life. Rose petals created an elaborate path from the entrance to the bedroom, their deep red color vivid against pristine white marble floors. What must have been 100 battery-operated candles cast a warm, golden glow throughout the space. Champagne chilled in a crystal bucket beside a king-sized bed covered in silk sheets. More rose petals were arranged in an intricate heart pattern across the bed. Soft music played from hidden speakers, something sultry and slow that made Lois's pulse quicken. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, Seoul's skyline glittered like a sea of diamonds. "Sang Hun." Lois turned to him, genuinely touched despite the wine fog. "Did you decorate this place yourself?" The door clicked shut behind them. The sound should have registered as something to notice, but Lois was too caught up in the romance of the moment. Sang Hun approached her from behind, his hands settling on her shoulders. She could feel the heat of his body, smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her want to lean into him. "Shoo," he whispered, his breath warm against her neck. His hands turned her to face him, gentle but firm. "Don't talk." His eyes were dark with intention as he cupped her face with both hands. "I want to kiss your lips." It wasn't a question. It was a statement of desire that sent heat pooling in Lois's stomach. She barely had time to nod before his mouth was on hers. The kiss started soft, almost tentative, as if he was memorizing the shape of her lips. Then it deepened, became urgent, hungry. Lois's hands came up to grip his jacket, pulling him closer, and she felt him smile against her mouth. "You have no idea how long I've wanted to do that," Sang Hun murmured against her lips. "Then don't stop," Lois breathed back. His hands slid from her face to her waist, then lower, pulling her against him. Lois could feel every hard plane of his body through the thin fabric of her dress. When his lips moved from her mouth to her neck, she let her head fall back, a soft sound escaping her throat. "The champagne is getting warm," Sang Hun said against her collarbone, his voice rough. "I don't care about champagne." "Good. Neither do I." He walked her backward, his hands never leaving her body, until the back of her knees hit the bed. Rose petals scattered as she sat, and Sang Hun knelt before her, his hands sliding up her legs, pushing the hem of her dress higher. "You're sure about this?" he asked, his eyes meeting hers. For a moment, he looked almost vulnerable. "I need you to be sure." The wine, the romance, the 3 months of building connection, the loneliness of 5 years, it all collided in that moment. Lois pulled him up to her, kissing him with an answer that needed no words. "I'm sure." What happened next unfolded in fragments that would later feel dreamlike in Lois's memory. The careful unzipping of her dress, the cool air on her skin followed by the heat of his hands, the silk sheets against her back, the weight of his body, the way he whispered her name like a prayer, the candlelight casting dancing shadows across his face, the view of Seoul's lights through the window, the city stretched out beneath them like a witness. His hands knew exactly where to touch. His mouth followed a map she didn't know existed on her own body. Time became elastic. Seconds stretching into eternities, minutes compressing into heartbeats. The music continued its sultry rhythm, a soundtrack to their tangled limbs and breathless whispers. Lois had forgotten what it felt like to be desired like this. Not as a curiosity, not as an experiment, but as a woman who was wanted, wholly and completely. The champagne eventually found its way into the equation, sipped from each other's lips, spilled on skin and licked away. Rose petals stuck to sweat-dampened skin. The candles burned lower, their light softening into a golden haze. At some point, Lois became aware of her phone buzzing on the nightstand. She reached for it instinctively, but Sang Hun caught her wrist. "Ignore it," he said, his voice husky. "Nothing matters but this. But us." He took her phone, and she watched through wine and pleasure-hazed eyes as he tapped the screen. "I'm putting it on Do Not Disturb. Tonight the world doesn't exist. Just you and me." Seemed romantic at the time. Thoughtful even. A man who wanted her full attention, who wanted to create a bubble where nothing could intrude. Lois let him set the phone aside and pulled him back to her. Lois woke to the sound of running water and the sensation of having been thoroughly, completely satisfied in ways she'd almost forgotten were possible. For a moment, she floated in that perfect space between sleep and waking, where everything felt warm and soft and right. Her body ached in the best possible way, the kind of pleasant soreness that came from hours of intense pleasure. The sheets were silk against her bare skin. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, painting everything in shades of gold. Then reality began to filter in with the morning light. Her hair was a complete disaster, curls going in every impossible direction. The rose petals that had seemed so romantic last night were now scattered everywhere, stuck to her skin, tangled in her hair, crushed into the sheets. Her makeup was definitely smeared. She felt sticky and disheveled and absolutely wrecked. And she couldn't stop smiling. The sound of the shower running made her smile widen. Sang Hun must be cleaning up. Her body, despite its soreness, tingled with anticipation at the thought of joining him. 5 years since she'd felt anything like what happened last night. 5 years of mediocre encounters and disappointing dates had made her forget that sex could be that. Korean men can barely satisfy a woman, or so the stereotype went. Clearly, Sang Hun hadn't gotten that memo. Lois stretched languidly, her body feeling like warm honey, and reached toward the sound of running water. "Sang Hun," she called out, her voice still rough from sleep and last night's activities. "Baby, you in the shower?" No response. Just the steady sound of water hitting tile. A slow, satisfied smile crossed her face. Maybe he couldn't hear her over the water. Maybe she should surprise him. Her body was already responding to the thought. Another round this morning sounded absolutely perfect. The man had awakened something in her that had been dormant for far too long. "Don't start without me," she murmured to herself, reaching for the shirt he'd discarded last night, except it wasn't there. In fact, looking around the room, none of his clothes were scattered on the floor where they'd fallen in their urgency. That was odd. But maybe he'd picked them up. Some men were tidy, even in hotels. Lois reached for her phone on the nightstand, intending to check the time and maybe send a flirty text about joining him in the shower. Her hand fumbled for it, and she frowned when she saw the screen. Do not disturb mode was on. That was unusual. She never used D&D. Her work required her to be available at all hours for potential emergencies. Then she saw the notification count, and her blood went cold. 47 missed calls. 189 unread messages. Instagram. 1,247 notifications. Twitter. 847 mentions. WhatsApp 23 group chats exploding. What the hell? Lois sat up abruptly, the pleasant morning haze evaporating like steam. Her hands were shaking as she unlocked her phone. The first notification made her stomach drop. Twitter at Lois in Seoul is trending in South Korea. 10.2 million views. Below it, a link with a thumbnail that made her vision blur. African lady are the baddest in the other room, fire peach Nojin. The thumbnail was a bit blurred, but Lois could see enough. A hotel room that looked exactly like this one. Rose petals, candles, and a woman who looked exactly like her. No, she whispered. No, 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 no. Her hands trembled so badly she almost dropped the phone as she clicked the link. The video was there, already viral, already shared thousands of times. The thumbnail showed her, clearly recognizable, in a state of undress that made her want to vomit. She closed it immediately, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. More notifications flooded in. Instagram DMs. OMG Lois, is that you? Girl, your famous face with tears of joy. This can't be real. Please tell me this isn't real. Your company is calling everyone. WhatsApp message from her boss, Mr. Park. Lois, call me immediately. This is urgent and extremely serious. Do not come to the office Monday. We need to discuss your employment status. WhatsApp message from her sister Chioma. Lois, what is happening? Mom is crying. Answer your phone, please tell me this isn't you. WhatsApp message from her friend Amara. Lois, where are you? Are you safe? Please respond. I'm coming to your apartment. The room tilted. Lois's breath came in short, sharp gasps as she scrolled through message after message, notification after notification, each one driving the horror deeper into her chest. 10 million views. 10 million. Her face was everywhere. Her body was everywhere. Her most intimate moments were being consumed by millions of strangers. Sang Hun. The name came out as a scream. Lois scrambled out of bed, not caring about her nakedness, her modesty. None of that mattered anymore. Young Sang Hun. She ran to the bathroom door, pounded on it with both fists. Open this door. Open it right now. The water was still running, but there was no response. Sang Hun. This isn't funny. Her voice broke. My noodles videos are online. Everyone can see. Open this door. Nothing. Just water. Lois grabbed the handle and twisted. The door swung open easily. Steam billowed out, and for a split second hope flared. He was there, he could explain. There was some misunderstanding. The bathroom was empty. Completely, utterly empty. The shower was running. Hot water cascading over pristine white tile. But there was no one in it. No Sang Hun. No clothes. No evidence anyone had been there at all except for the steam. Lois's legs gave out. She collapsed against the doorframe, the marble cold against her bare skin. Her phone still clutched in her shaking hand. He'd left. He'd set the shower running to make her think he was still there, and he'd left. Her phone buzzed with a new message. Unknown number. Her thumb moved on autopilot to open it. Good morning, beautiful. Sleep well. Below the text, a screenshot. The viral video at 10.2 million views and climbing. You looked so good last night, Lois. So passionate. So uninhibited. Korea is really enjoying getting to know you better. Then another message appeared. Here's how this works. 10 million won. Transfer to the account I'll send you. You have 48 hours. If I receive the money by Monday 6 p.m., This blurred version is all anyone sees. If I don't receive the money. A new image loaded. A screenshot of an unblurred video, her face crystal clear, every visible intimate detail of her body. Then everyone sees everything. Her face, her body, every single moment. Your boss, your colleagues, your family, your friends, the whole world. Think about that the next time you check your phone and see your mom calling. Don't bother going to the police. By the time they investigate, your full video will be on Pornhub, Xvideos, every Korean community forum. You'll never work in Seoul again. You'll never escape it. The internet is forever, Lois. 48 hours. Monday 6 p.m. 10 million won. TikTok. Thank you for such a memorable Valentine's Day. You really are the baddest. Lois stared at the messages, at the screenshots, at the evidence of her complete and utter destruction, and something inside her simply broke. A sound came out of her that she didn't recognize. Part scream, part sob, entirely inhuman. She hurled her phone across the bathroom, watching it skitter across the wet tile, knowing even as she did it that it was pointless. The damage was done. The video was out there. 10 million people had already seen her in her most vulnerable, intimate moments. She was ruined. Her name, her reputation, her career, her family's honor, her future and soul. Everything she'd built over 10 years, destroyed in one night. All because she'd wanted to feel desired. All because she'd let herself hope. Lois pulled her knees to her chest, sitting naked on the cold bathroom floor of a hotel room that smelled like sex and roses and betrayal, and finally let herself fall apart completely. Outside, Seoul was waking up to a beautiful Sunday morning. Inside, Lois Adeyemi's life was ending. The hotel room felt like a crime scene. Lois sat on the bathroom floor for what might have been minutes or hours. Time had lost all meaning. Eventually, survival instinct kicked in. She couldn't stay here. She had to move. Had to think. Had to fix this somehow. Her hands shook violently as she gathered her scattered clothes, pulling on the burgundy dress that had felt so confident last night and now felt like evidence of her stupidity. Every rose petal she stepped on felt like an accusation. The rumpled silk sheets were a monument to her naivety. She retrieved her phone from where it had skittered under the sink. The screen was cracked, a spiderweb pattern across the display that seemed fitting. More notifications had accumulated in the minutes she'd spent catatonic on the floor. Instagram. 2,341 new notifications. Twitter at Lois in Seoul trending #1 in South Korea, 13.7 million views. It was getting worse. Exponentially worse. Every second she stood there frozen. More people were watching her most intimate moments. Lois opened her banking app with trembling fingers. Her savings account showed 8.2 million won years of careful saving, her emergency fund, the money she'd been setting aside to maybe buy an apartment someday. The blackmailer wanted 10 million. She didn't have 10 million, but she could get 5 million to him now. Maybe that would be enough to stop the full video from being released. Maybe he'd accept a partial payment. Her fingers fumbled as she initiated the transfer to the account number he'd sent. 5 million won, gone in seconds. Years of disciplined saving evaporated. She waited, staring at her phone, willing it to buzz with confirmation that he'd received it, that he'd stop, that this nightmare would pause long enough for her to figure out what to do next. The response came 2 minutes later. Unknown. Only 5 million. Lois. That's not how this works. The price was 10 million. You're 5 million short. But since you're trying to cooperate, I'll be generous. You have until tonight midnight to send the remaining 5 million. Fail and the full video goes live. Oh, and the price just went up. Interest, you understand. Make it 7 million more. 12 million total now. You sent 5, so you owe 7. Better start calling those friends. Midnight. Don't be late. Lois's vision blurred. She'd just sent him everything she had, and he wanted more. He changed the price. This wasn't going to stop. Please. I don't have more. That's everything I have. Lois replied. Then get creative. Rich, successful girl like you. You have friends. colleagues, family. I'm sure someone will lend you money to save your reputation. Or you could just accept that everyone's going to see you naked. Choice. 7 million. Midnight. He replied. This is illegal. I'll go to the police. Lois said. Go ahead. Tell the police you got drunk and fucked a stranger on Valentine's Day. I'm sure they'll be very sympathetic. Meanwhile, while you're filling out police reports, I'll be uploading 4K footage to every porn site in existence. By the time the police do anything, if they do anything, you'll be Korea's most famous adult film star. 7 million. Midnight. This is the last time I'm being nice. He plied. Lois slid down the wall, the phone slipping from her hands. He wasn't going to stop. Even if she somehow found 7 million more. He'd just demand more after that. This was never about the money. This was about power. About destroying her. And it was working. Monday morning Lois stood outside the gleaming headquarters of Hanul Corporation at 8:47 a.m., 13 minutes before she was supposed to be at her desk. Her boss had sent 3 messages Sunday night, each more urgent than the last, demanding she come in first thing Monday morning. She'd barely slept. The hotel had charged her credit card an exorbitant rate for a late checkout she didn't remember agreeing to. She'd taken a taxi back to her apartment, where she'd spent Sunday hiding under her covers, her phone buzzing constantly with messages she couldn't bear to read. Her reflection in the building's glass exterior looked like a ghost, makeup attempting to hide the evidence of crying, sunglasses covering swollen eyes, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her work clothes felt like a costume for a role she no longer qualified for. The lobby was worse than she'd imagined. 3 employees from different departments stood near the elevators, their conversation stopping abruptly when they saw her. Whispers followed her to the elevator. She could feel their eyes, their judgment. That's her. Can you believe 10 million views, I heard. Shameful. The elevator ride to the 14th floor lasted an eternity. When the doors opened, the entire floor seemed to go silent. Colleagues who'd smiled at her Friday now found their computer screens fascinating. Her assistant Min-ji wouldn't make eye contact. Mr. Park wants to see you immediately, Min-ji said quietly. In the large conference room. The large conference room. Lois's voice came out steady despite the fear churning in her stomach. The large conference room seated 20 people. Not his office. Min-ji finally looked at her, and Lois saw something like pity in her eyes. The board is waiting. The board. God. Lois walked through the office on legs that threatened to give out. Every step felt like walking to an execution. The large conference room had glass walls, deliberately transparent to promote openness and accountability. Right now, it meant her humiliation would have an audience. 12 people sat around the conference table. Mr. Park, her direct supervisor, 3 other senior directors, and 8 members of the executive board including the CEO. All men, all Korean, all staring at her with expressions ranging from disgust to barely concealed amusement. Ms. Adeyemi, Mr. Park said coldly, not bothering with his usual greeting. Sit. Lois sat, her hands clasped in her lap to hide their shaking. I'm sure you know why you're here, Seo Hwang said. He was 62, old school, conservative. The kind of man who believed women should be modest, traditional, invisible. Your activities this weekend have brought considerable embarrassment to Hanul Corporation. Don't bother going to the police. By the time they investigate, your full video will be on Pornhub, Xvideos, every Korean community forum. You'll never work in Seoul again. You'll never escape it. The internet is forever, Lois. 48 hours. Monday, 6 p.m. 10 million won. TikTok. Thank you for such a memorable Valentine's Day. You really are the baddest. Lois stared at the messages, at the screenshots, at the evidence of her complete and utter destruction, and something inside her simply broke. A sound came out of her that she didn't recognize. Part scream, part sob, entirely inhuman. She hurled her phone across the bathroom, watching it skitter across the wet tile, knowing even as she did it that it was pointless. The damage was done. The video was out there. 10 million people had already seen her in her most vulnerable, intimate moments. She was ruined. Her name, her reputation, her career, her family's honor, her future and soul. Everything she'd built over 10 years, destroyed in one night. All because she'd wanted to feel desired. All because she'd let herself hope. Lois pulled her knees to her chest, sitting naked on the cold bathroom floor of a hotel room that smelled like sex and roses and betrayal, and finally let herself fall apart completely. Outside, Seoul was waking up to a beautiful Sunday morning. Inside, Lois Adeyemi's life was ending. The hotel room felt like a crime scene. Lois sat on the bathroom floor for what might have been minutes or hours. Time had lost all meaning. Eventually, survival instinct kicked in. She couldn't stay here. She had to move. Had to think. Had to fix this somehow. Her hands shook violently as she gathered her scattered clothes, pulling on the burgundy dress that had felt so confident last night and now felt like evidence of her stupidity. Every rose petal she stepped on felt like an accusation. The rumpled silk sheets were a monument to her naivety. She retrieved her phone from where it had skittered under the sink. The screen was cracked, a spiderweb pattern across the display that seemed fitting. More notifications had accumulated in the minutes she'd spent catatonic on the floor. Instagram. 2,341 new notifications. Twitter at Lois and Seoul trending #1 in South Korea, 13.7 million views. It was getting worse. Exponentially worse. Every second she stood there frozen. More people were watching her most intimate moments. Lois opened her banking app with trembling fingers. Her savings account showed 8.2 million years of careful saving, her emergency fund, the money she'd been setting aside to maybe buy an apartment someday. The blackmailer wanted 10 million. She didn't have 10 million, but she could get 5 million to him now. Maybe that would be enough to stop the full video from being released. Maybe he'd accept a partial payment. Her fingers fumbled as she initiated the transfer to the account number he'd sent. 5 million, gone in seconds. Years of disciplined saving evaporated. She waited, staring at her phone, willing it to buzz with confirmation that he'd received it, that he'd stop, that this nightmare would pause long enough for her to figure out what to do next. The response came 2 minutes later. Unknown. Only 5 million. Lois. That's not how this works. The price was 10 million. You're 5 million short. But since you're trying to cooperate, I'll be generous. You have until tonight midnight to send the remaining 5 million. Fail and the full video goes live. Oh, and the price just went up. Interest, you understand. Make it 7 million more. 12 million total now. You sent 5, so you owe 7. Better start calling those friends. Midnight. Don't be late. Lois's vision blurred. She'd just sent him everything she had, and he wanted more. He changed the price. This wasn't going to stop. Please. I don't have more. That's everything I have. Lois replied. Then get creative. Rich, successful girl like you. You have friends, colleagues, family. I'm sure someone will lend you money to save your reputation. Or you could just accept that everyone's going to see you naked. Choice. 7 million. Midnight. He replied. This is illegal. I'll go to the police. Lois said. Go ahead. Tell the police you got drunk and fucked a stranger on Valentine's Day. I'm sure they'll be very sympathetic. Meanwhile, while you're filling out police reports, I'll be uploading 4K footage to every porn site in existence. By the time the police do anything, if they do anything, you'll be Korea's most famous adult film star. 7 million. Midnight. This is the last time I'm being nice. He plied. Lois slid down the wall, the phone slipping from her hands. He wasn't going to stop. Even if she somehow found 7 million more. He'd just demand more after that. This was never about the money. This was about power. About destroying her. And it was working. Monday morning, Lois stood outside the gleaming headquarters of Hanul Corporation at 8:47 a.m., 13 minutes before she was supposed to be at her desk. Her boss had sent 3 messages Sunday night, each more urgent than the last, demanding she come in first thing Monday morning. She'd barely slept. The hotel had charged her credit card an exorbitant rate for a late checkout she didn't remember agreeing to. She'd taken a taxi back to her apartment, where she'd spent Sunday hiding under her covers, her phone buzzing constantly with messages she couldn't bear to read. Her reflection in the building's glass exterior looked like a ghost, makeup attempting to hide the evidence of crying, sunglasses covering swollen eyes, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her work clothes felt like a costume for a role she no longer qualified for. The lobby was worse than she'd imagined. 3 employees from different departments stood near the elevators, their conversation stopping abruptly when they saw her. Whispers followed her to the elevator. She could feel their eyes, their judgment. "That's her. Can you believe 10 million views?" I heard. Shameful. The elevator ride to the 14th floor lasted an eternity. When the doors opened, the entire floor seemed to go silent. Colleagues who'd smiled at her Friday now found their computer screens fascinating. Her assistant, Minji, wouldn't make eye contact. "Mr. Park wants to see you immediately," Minji said quietly. "In the large conference room." The large conference room. Lois's voice came out steady despite the fear churning in her stomach. The large conference room seated 20 people. Not his office. Minji finally looked at her, and Lois saw something like pity in her eyes. "The board is waiting." The board. God. Lois walked through the office on legs that threatened to give out. Every step felt like walking to an execution. The large conference room had glass walls, deliberately transparent to camera. "How exactly are you a victim?" "I didn't know I was being recorded." Lois's voice rose despite her attempts to stay calm. "That's illegal. This is revenge porn. This is you showing remarkably poor judgment," Mr. Park interrupted. "Whether you knew about the camera or not, you chose to engage in behavior unbecoming of someone in your position." The meeting dissolved into Korean, rapid-fire discussion that Lois could understand but couldn't interrupt. They talked about her as if she wasn't there. Used words like inappropriate, shameful, disappointing, foreign, different values. Finally, CO Huang switched back to English. "Effective immediately, your employment at Hanul Corporation is terminated. You'll receive 2 weeks severance. Generous considering the circumstances. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. Your access has already been revoked." The room spun. "You're firing me for being the victim of a crime. We're terminating your employment due to behavior that violates our code of conduct and damages our corporate reputation," Mr. Park said, his voice devoid of the warmth he'd shown her for 5 years. "The decision is final." From outside the glass conference room, Lois could see her colleagues watching. Some looked sympathetic. Most looked curious. A few, she could have sworn she saw it, were smiling. Director Choi leaned back in his chair, not even bothering to hide his satisfaction. Perhaps this will serve as a lesson about the consequences of loose morals. Something inside Lois cracked. 5 years of swallowing microaggressions, of being professional in the face of discrimination, of proving herself over and over again. It all came pouring out. "Loose morals," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "I went on a date. One date with a man I'd been talking to for months. A man who drugged my drinks, recorded me without consent, and is now blackmailing me. And your response is to fire me. Your response should have been not to put yourself in that position," CEO Huang said coldly. "Jae Sung from accounting got arrested last year for drunk driving and he still works here." Lois shot back. "Director Lee had an affair with his secretary and she's the one who got transferred. But I'm the one you fire. For being violated. Those situations are different." "Different how?" "Because I'm black. Because I'm a woman. Because I'm foreign. Which one makes me deserving of this?" The room went very quiet. "Ms. Adeyemi," Mr. Park said carefully, "I suggest you collect your things and leave with dignity before this becomes more unpleasant." Lois stood, her legs somehow holding her weight. She looked at each face around that table. Men who'd praised her work, who'd promoted her, who'd benefited from her ideas and her labor. "You're all cowards," she said clearly. And history will remember that when someone needed help, you chose cruelty. She walked out of that conference room with her head high, even as the whispers erupted behind her. Security was already at her desk with a box. The days that followed blurred into a nightmare that had no clear beginning or end. Lois's apartment became her prison. She couldn't leave without seeing people staring at their phones, then looking at her, recognition and judgment flashing across their faces. Twice she tried to go to the convenience store. Both times someone recognized her. One person took a photo. Another said something in Korean that made the clerk laugh. She stopped leaving. The video kept spreading. 20 million views. 25 million. The blurred version was everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Korean community forums, international sites. People made memes, made jokes, discussed her body with clinical detachment, as if she wasn't a person but a thing to be analyzed. The comments were the worst. Body is nice but face is mid. African women really are built different. Korean guy got himself a wild one. She works at Hanul Corp worked. They fired her ass. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Why would she go to a hotel with a stranger? She was asking for it. Foreign women have no shame. This is why Korean men should stick to Korean women. I'd hit that though. Desperate much. 10 years in Korea and still no man wanted her alone. Every comment was a cut. 1,000 cuts. Death by a million judgments from people who didn't know her, would never know her, but felt entitled to destroy her. Her phone became an instrument of torture. She couldn't throw it away. The blackmailer still sent messages, each demand more impossible than the last. She couldn't stop checking social media. Some masochistic part of her needed to know how bad it was, needed to witness her own destruction. Her mother called from Nigeria. Lois couldn't answer. Her sister Chioma sent a voice message, her voice thick with tears. Mom won't stop crying. The church people saw it. Everyone saw it. How could you do this to us? Not how could someone do this to you, but how could you do this to us? Even her family blamed her. Panic attacks started. The first one hit at 3 a.m. Her chest tightening, breath coming in gasps that wouldn't fill her lungs, the certainty that she was dying right there on her bedroom floor. It lasted 20 minutes. She had 3 more before sunrise. Then one morning, the blackmailer sent a new message. Time's up. No more money. Fame. Enjoy your fame. A link followed. The full video, unblurred, her face crystal clear, uploaded to 3 major adult sites. Within hours it had 500,000 views. Her LinkedIn was flooded with messages from recruiters withdrawing job offers. Her professional network, colleagues she'd worked with for years, were removing her from connections, distancing themselves from the scandal. The Korean news picked it up. Not as a story about revenge porn or digital crime. As a story about foreign professionals and inappropriate behavior. Her face was on the evening news, pixelated but recognizable. The commentary focused on cultural differences and the importance of maintaining professional conduct. She was the cautionary tale, the example, the punchline. Lois stood in her bathroom at 2 a.m., staring at the bottle of sleeping pills her doctor had prescribed months ago for insomnia. The bottle was full. She'd never needed them before. How many would it take? Would it hurt? Would anyone even find her body before it started to smell? The thoughts came with strange clarity, as if her brain was simply problem-solving. This was a problem. The problem was her existence. Remove the existence, remove the problem. Simple. Clean. Permanent. She opened the bottle. Poured the pills into her palm. Small white circles of oblivion. Her phone buzzed. Another notification, another person sharing her video, another comment about her body, her choices, her worthlessness. She lifted her hand toward her mouth. The apartment door burst open. Lois! Amara's voice cut through the fog. Lois heard rapid footsteps, and then her best friend was there, grabbing her wrist, sending pills scattering across the bathroom tile like small white tears. No, 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 Amara was saying, her voice breaking. Lois, no. Look at me. Look at me. Lois looked. Amara's face was streaked with tears, her eyes wild with fear. How did you? Lois's voice sounded strange, distant. You weren't answering. For 3 days, nothing. I used the spare key you gave me. Amara pulled her into a fierce hug. I'm not leaving. Do you hear me? I'm not leaving you. Lois wanted to feel relief. Wanted to feel grateful. Wanted to feel anything other than the vast, empty numbness that had swallowed everything else. It won't stop, she whispered against Amara's shoulder. It's never going to stop. Everywhere I go, everyone I meet, they'll know. They'll have seen me. They'll judge me. I can't escape it. So we fight, Amara said fiercely. We fight back. There's nothing to fight. It's already everywhere. I'm already destroyed. Amara pulled back, gripping Lois's shoulders. Listen to me. This was a crime. You were targeted, recorded without consent, and blackmailed. That's not your shame, that's his crime. No one cares about that. They only care that I was stupid enough to trust him. Then we'll make them care. But first, Amara's voice softened. First we keep you alive. And we get you help. 1 week after Valentine's Day. Amara didn't leave. She slept on Lois's couch, made her eat even when food tasted like ash, took away her phone when the notifications became too much, and sat with her through the panic attacks that came in waves. On Sunday morning she announced, I made you an appointment. Lois looked up from the couch where she'd been staring at nothing for the past hour. An appointment for what? Therapy. Specialized therapy for digital crime victims. There's a support group that meets weekly. And a therapist who works specifically with revenge porn cases. Amara's voice was gentle but firm. We're going. Today. I don't need. Yes, you do. Lois, I found you about to swallow a bottle of pills. You need help. Professional help. This isn't something you can handle alone. I can't face people. I can't go outside and have them recognize me and... The center is in Itaewon. It's private. Confidential. Most of the people there are foreigners who've been through similar things. You won't be judged there. Lois wanted to argue. Wanted to retreat back into the numbness. But some small part of her, the part that had survived 10 years in Seoul, that had built a career from nothing, that had kept going even when everything said to give up, that part whispered, try. Okay, she heard herself say. Okay. The center was tucked away on the 3rd floor of a nondescript building, deliberately unmarked to protect its clients' privacy. Amara held Lois's hand as they rode the elevator up, as if afraid Lois might bolt. The reception area was quiet, painted in soft blues and greens, colors designed to calm. A Korean woman in her 50s greeted them with a kind smile that didn't feel performative. You must be Lois, she said in English. I'm Dr. Han. Thank you for coming. I know how difficult this must be. Dr. Han led them to a small office. Comfortable chairs, tissues within easy reach, a window looking out over Seoul's rooftops. Amara squeezed Lois's hand and said she'd wait outside. Lois sat and felt the weight of the past week crash over her. I don't know where to start, she admitted. Dr. Han's smile was sad but understanding. Start with I'm here. That's enough for today. For the first time in 7 days, Lois felt something crack in the wall she'd built around herself. Tears she'd been holding back flooded out. Ugly, gasping sobs that she couldn't control. Dr. Han simply handed her tissues and waited. When Lois could finally speak, she told the story. All of it. The 3 months of messages, the Valentine's dinner, the hotel room, the morning after, the blackmail, the firing, the comments, the way her entire life had imploded in less than a week. And the worst part, Lois said, her voice raw, is that everyone acts like this is my fault. Like I deserved this because I trusted someone. Because I wanted to feel desired. Because I dared to hope. This is not your fault, Dr. Han said firmly. What happened to you is a crime. Multiple crimes, actually. Recording someone without consent, distributing intimate images, blackmail. These are serious offenses. You are a victim, not a perpetrator. Try telling that to the 17 million people who've watched me. I understand it feels hopeless right now. But you're not alone in this. There's a whole network of support available. Legal resources, advocacy groups, and... Dr. Han paused. Actually, there's someone I'd like you to meet. He'll be speaking at our support group session Wednesday evening. He's a detective who specializes in digital sex crimes. He's helped dozens of women like you bring their attackers to justice. Something flickered in Lois's chest. Not hope, not yet. But maybe the possibility of hope. A detective. Detective Kim Min-jun. He's one of the few in Seoul who takes these cases seriously. Who believes victims. Well, you'll see. Will you come Wednesday? Lois thought about the pills scattered across her bathroom floor. Thought about the empty days stretching ahead, each one a battle against the urge to give up. I'll think about it, she said. Dr. Han smiled. That's all I ask. Thinking about it means you're still here. Still fighting. That takes more courage than you know. As Lois left the office, Amara waiting with 2 coffees and a determined expression, she felt something she hadn't felt in 7 days. Not hope. Not yet. But the faint, fragile possibility that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of her story. Maybe it was the beginning of something else. Something that looked like justice. 2 weeks after Valentine's Day. The Seoul Digital Crime Victim Support Center's group therapy room was deliberately designed to feel safe. Soft lighting, chairs arranged in a circle rather than rows, warm earth tones that psychology said promoted calm. Lois sat in one of those chairs, hands clasped so tightly in her lap her knuckles had gone white, and wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake coming here. Around her sat 7 other women. Ages ranging from early 20s to mid-40s. Korean, Chinese, Filipino, American. All with the same haunted look in their eyes that Lois saw in her mirror every morning. All victims of the same digital violence that had destroyed her life. Dr. Han stood at the front of the circle with a man who made Lois's breath catch. Not from attraction, but from the sheer presence he commanded without seeming to try. Detective Kim Min-jun was not what she'd expected. He was 36, tall for a Korean man at just over 6 feet, with a lean build that suggested someone who forgot to eat when working cases. His hair was slightly too long, falling into dark eyes that held an intensity Lois recognized, the look of someone who'd seen too much darkness and refused to look away. He wore jeans and a simple black sweater rather than a suit, and there was something about the way he held himself that radiated quiet competence. But it was his eyes that struck Lois. When Dr. Han introduced him and his gaze swept the circle, landing briefly on each woman, there was no pity there, no judgment, just a fierce, burning anger that wasn't directed at them but at the people who'd hurt them. "Thank you for having me," Detective Kim said, his voice deep and steady. He spoke in Korean first, then switched to English. His accent was good, American-influenced. "I know this isn't easy. Sharing your stories, facing what happened to you. But I want you to know something important. What happened to each of you is a crime. Not a mistake you made. Not poor judgment. A crime committed against you by predators who should be in prison." One of the women, a young Korean woman named Seo-yeon who couldn't have been more than 23, spoke up, her voice small. "The police told me there was nothing they could do. They said I chose to send those photos to my boyfriend." Detective Kim's jaw tightened. That's exactly the problem. Too many officers don't understand digital sex crimes. They see intimate content and assume consent, when consent to share privately is not consent to distribute publicly. He leaned forward slightly. "I'm here because I believe you, all of you, and I want to help you fight back." For the next hour, Detective Kim explained the legal framework around revenge porn, non-consensual recording, and blackmail in South Korea. He talked about recent cases he'd worked. 14 convictions in the past 2 years, with more cases pending. He explained how digital forensics could trace uploads, how dating app profiles could be tracked, how payment trails left evidence. "These criminals think they're untouchable because the internet feels anonymous," he said. "But digital footprints are harder to erase than most people realize. Every upload, every message, every transaction, it leaves a trace. And I'm very good at following traces. When the group session ended, women clustered around Detective Kim with questions, with hope that hadn't existed an hour ago. Lois hung back, still uncertain. Amara had stayed for the session and now gently nudged her forward. "Talk to him," Amara whispered. "What have you got to lose?" Everything, Lois thought. But she'd already lost everything, hadn't she? She approached as the last woman was leaving. Detective Kim was packing up his materials. Case files, business cards, a worn notebook that looked like it had seen 1,000 crime scenes. "Detective Kim." Lois's voice came out steadier than she felt. He looked up and his eyes sharpened with recognition. "You're Lois Adeyemi. I've seen your case." The words hit like a punch. Course he'd seen it. 28 million people had seen it by now. "I mean," he corrected quickly, reading her expression, "I've seen the police report you filed. Or tried to file. Gangnam Station, right? Officer Lee told you there wasn't enough evidence." "He told me I should have known better than to go to a hotel with a stranger," Lois said bitterly. "Your case has evidence written all over it." "May I?" He gestured to 2 chairs. They sat, and Lois found herself telling the story again, but this time to someone who listened like he was cataloging every detail for a case file. Which she realized he was. Sang Hun, Detective Kim repeated, pulling out his notebook. "That's the name he used on the dating app?" "Yes. He said he worked in import-export. Traveled frequently. Classic cover. Import-export is vague enough that constant travel seems legitimate." He wrote quickly. "The hotel. Do you remember which one?" "The Grand Siamayan in Gangnam. Room 1447. "Good. Hotels have records. Security footage. Credit card payments. More notes. The dating app profile. Do you still have access to it?" "He deleted it. The day after it happened. I checked and the entire profile was gone." Deleted from your view doesn't mean deleted from the server. Dating apps keep records for legal purposes. He looked up, and for the first time Lois saw something like hope reflected back at her. "Ms. Adeyemi, your case is not unsolvable. In fact, it follows a pattern I've seen before. The elaborate hotel setup, the drugging via alcohol, the immediate blackmail, the escalating demands. This is professional. Organized. Organized." Lois felt cold. "You mean there are more victims?" "I mean this might be part of a larger operation. A network." He closed his notebook. "I want to investigate your case. Properly. But I need your consent and your cooperation. It won't be easy. You'll have to relive details you'd rather forget. You'll have to be patient, these cases take time. And there's no guarantee of success, though I have a very good track record." Lois looked at this man who'd walked into her nightmare and offered something she'd stopped believing existed. "Justice. What do you need from me?" Detective Kim's smile was small but genuine. "Everything you can remember. And your trust. The investigation begins." The next 3 months became a strange rhythm of destruction and reconstruction. Lois was still living in her apartment, still unemployed, still dealing with the daily reality of being Seoul's most infamous viral video. But now, at least she had purpose. Detective Kim. He'd insisted she call him Min-jun after their 3rd meeting, worked her case with the intensity of someone personally offended by injustice. They met twice a week, sometimes at the support center, sometimes at a quiet cafe in Itaewon where the staff knew to seat them in the back corner and not ask questions. By week 3, "I found something," Min-jun said without preamble when Lois arrived at the cafe. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. The video was uploaded from 3 different IP addresses simultaneously. One in Gangnam, one in Itaewon, one in Busan. That's coordinated. Professional distribution to maximize viral spread. He pulled up a map showing the upload locations. But here's the interesting part. All 3 IP addresses have been used before. To upload similar content. Different victims, same pattern. Lois felt sick. How many victims? That I can confirm. 47 women over the past 3 years. Different ages, different nationalities, but all foreign or Jyopo, Korean Americans. All professionals. All targeted via dating apps. All videos uploaded with similar titles referencing their race or nationality. 47, Lois whispered. Why haven't I heard about this? Because victims don't report. They're ashamed. Scared. They've been told it's their fault. And the few who do report get dismissed by officers like Lee who don't take digital crimes seriously. Min-jun's voice was hard. But I take them seriously. And I'm going to take this network down. By week 8 he pulled up a financial document. I've been following the money. The account that received your 5 million, 1 million won. It's registered to a shell company. But the shell company has a board member. Someone who works at. He paused. Hanul Corporation. Lois's blood ran cold. What? The name is Kwon Yuna. Does that mean anything to you? Took Lois a moment to place it. Yuna. Not her direct colleague but someone in a parallel department. Marketing strategy. They'd competed for the senior director position 2 years ago. Lois had won. Yuna had smiled at her at the announcement meeting. Congratulated her. Seemed genuinely happy. She works at my company, Lois said slowly. But why would she? Jealousy, Min-jun said. According to the financial records, Yuna made the initial payment to Park Min-ho 4 months before your Valentine's Day date. She hired him to target you specifically. The goal was to destroy your reputation and get you fired so she could take your position. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. This wasn't random. This wasn't just bad luck or poor judgment. This was calculated, personal. Someone she'd worked with, smiled at in hallways, had orchestrated her complete destruction. That's why she knew exactly how to time it, Lois said, pieces clicking into place. Why the video went viral right before a major board meeting. Why the board knew about it so quickly. Yuna probably made sure they saw it. Exactly, Min-jun confirmed. She paid Park Min-ho to seduce you, record you, and destroy you. It's conspiracy, blackmail, and about 7 other felonies. We're arresting both of them. 3 months after Valentine's Day. Lois wasn't present for Park Min-ho's arrest, but Min-jun told her about it afterward. They'd found him in a high-rise apartment in Gangnam, funded by his blackmail money. His computer held evidence of 47 victims. Names, dates, videos, payment records, everything meticulously documented like a business ledger. He'd smiled when they handcuffed him. You'll never make it stick, he'd said in Korean. These women won't testify. They're too ashamed. Watch me, Min-jun had replied. Yuna's arrest happened at Hanul Corporation. Min-jun had insisted Lois be present for that one, though she stayed in an unmarked car across the street. She watched through binoculars as Min-jun and 3 other officers walked into the building. 15 minutes later, they emerged with Yuna in handcuffs. Even from a distance, Lois could see the shock on her face, the entitled disbelief that she could actually face consequences. Yuna looked up, and for one moment, their eyes met across the distance. Lois saw recognition, panic, and then rage. Good, Lois thought. Feel what I felt. 4 months later, at the courtroom, the prosecution called Kwon Yuna to the stand. Yuna had tried to distance herself from Park Min-ho, claiming she barely knew him. Her lawyer argued she was a victim too, manipulated by Park Min-ho's charm, unaware of the extent of his crimes. Yuna's hands trembled. Her lawyer whispered something urgent in her ear. Finally she spoke, her voice barely audible. It was a contract. The courtroom erupted in whispers. What kind of contract? The prosecutor pressed. I wanted Lois's position. She didn't deserve it. She's not even Korean. She doesn't belong in senior management. Yuna's composure was cracking, bitterness seeping through. I worked twice as hard, but they promoted her because of diversity initiatives. 'Cause she was different. Special. So you hired Park Min-ho to destroy her career? I hired him to expose her for what she really is. Someone with no morals, no self-control. I didn't force her to go to that hotel. I didn't force her to drink. I didn't force her to do those things. She made her choices. Lois felt rage surge through her. But Min-jun's hand on her shoulder kept her seated. You paid 20 million won for someone to seduce, record, and blackmail Ms. Adeyemi, then ensured the video went viral at precisely the moment it would cause maximum professional damage. Is that correct? Yuna's silence was answer enough. The prosecutor turned to the judge. No further questions, Your Honor. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Lois sat in the hallway outside the courtroom, Amara on one side, Min-jun on the other. Her palms were sweating. 4 months of investigation. 6 weeks of trial. Everything came down to 12 people deciding if her violation mattered. Guilty. On the charge of blackmail and extortion. Guilty. On the charge of fraud. Guilty. With each guilty, Lois felt something loosen in her chest. The jury continued through all 17 charges. Guilty. 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 Park Min-ho's expression never changed. Then it was Yuna's turn. On the charge of conspiracy to commit blackmail. Guilty. On the charge of criminal solicitation. Guilty. Yuna's crying became audible sobs. When the verdicts were finished, the judge addressed the court. This case represents one of the most calculated and cruel schemes this court has seen. The defendants systematically targeted vulnerable women, violated their privacy, and profited from their trauma. The damage done extends far beyond the individual victims to all women who now must live with the fear that their intimate moments could be weaponized against them. He turned to Park Min-ho. You have shown no remorse. You treated these women as commodities to be exploited. I sentence you to 10 years imprisonment, with no possibility of parole for 7 years. Park Min-ho's jaw tightened, the first crack in his composure. Ms. Kwon, you enabled and funded these crimes out of jealousy and bigotry. You destroyed a colleague's career and reputation because you believed your Korean heritage entitled you to success over her merit. I sentence you to 5 years imprisonment. Yuna collapsed in her chair. Afterward, outside the courthouse, Lois stood in the summer sun, reporters shouting questions she didn't answer. Min-jun had his hand on her elbow, guiding her through the crowd to a waiting car. How do you feel? Amara asked once they were safely inside. Lois thought about it. The video was still out there. 32 million views now. Her name was still synonymous with scandal. She was still unemployed, still rebuilding her reputation piece by piece. But Park Min-ho was going to prison. Yuna was going to prison. And 7 other women had found their voices because she'd found hers first. I feel like I survived, Lois said finally. And that's enough for today. Min-jun's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his expression shifted. Something Lois had learned to recognize as his case-breaking look. What is it? She asked. Another victim just came forward. From Park Min-ho's network. She saw the trial coverage and wants to file charges against her attacker. He looked at Lois. She specifically asked if you would meet with her. Said your courage gave her courage. Lois felt tears prick her eyes, but this time they weren't from pain. Yes, she said. Of course I'll meet with her. 1 year later. The conference room at Seoul Digital Rights Foundation was packed with faces Lois now knew. Fellow survivors, advocates, lawyers who specialized in digital crimes, and 3 junior detectives Min-jun was training. Lois stood at the podium looking out at the audience. A year ago, she couldn't leave her apartment. Now she was giving the keynote speech at South Korea's largest digital rights conference. My name is Lois Adeyemi, she began. And 1 year ago I became one of the most viewed women in South Korea. Not for my accomplishments, not for my work, but because someone violated me, recorded it, and profited from my trauma. The room was silent, attentive. For a long time I believed the narrative others created about me. That I was stupid, reckless, deserving of what happened. But here's what I know now. What happened to me was not my fault. It was a crime. And I am not defined by the worst thing someone else did to me. She paused, making eye contact with a young woman in the third row who looked terrified and hopeful in equal measure. A new victim, probably, gathering courage. If you're watching this and something similar happened to you, I want you to know. It's not your shame. It's theirs. And there are people like Detective Kim, like Dr. Han, like the advocates in this room, who believe you. Who will fight for you. You are not alone. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. But what mattered most was the young woman in the third row, who caught Lois afterward with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "I thought I was the only one. I thought I couldn't tell anyone." "You can tell someone," Lois said gently. "You can tell me. And we'll make sure you're not another statistic. We'll make sure you're a survivor." That night, Lois stood on her apartment balcony, looking out at Seoul's glittering skyline. The city that had broken her had also rebuilt her. The place she'd almost left had become home in a deeper way than before. Her phone rang. "Minjun." "Another one just came forward," he said without preamble. But this time she reported it immediately. "Kept all the evidence. She said she knew what to do because she saw your TED Talk." Lois smiled. "Then let's get her justice. Already on it. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow." She hung up and took a deep breath of Seoul's night air. Somewhere out there, Park Min-ho was in a prison cell. Yoona was serving her sentence. And 47 women. No, 63 now, had found their voices. The video was still out there. It would always be out there. But so was she. Still standing. Still fighting. Still refusing to let one night of violation become her entire story. Lois Adeyemi had been Seoul's scandal. Now she was Seoul's survivor. Its advocate. Its warrior. And that was a story worth living. Like, subscribe, and comment to help us reach more people with stories that matter.